All right. We're going to go ahead and get started, everyone. So data scientists are constantly searching for new ways to optimize their product quality, enhance their processes, and achieve better outcomes. But how can you ensure high standards and world-class quality? In today's Technically Speaking, we invite you to learn techniques and principles to ensure your quality processes are robust, transparent, and constantly improving, and also discover how JUMP can assist you along the way. Our speaker discusses methods to make your data easier to access and demonstrates how automating routine tasks can free up the necessary time to engage in improvement activities. I'm Kirsten Cornell, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's Technically Speaking. Our presenter, Jed Campbell, an educator by training, is a master black belt in Six Sigma. He has vast experience as a problem solver, ranging from process improvement in manufacturing to designing and coaching experiments in rocket science. Prior to joining JUMP, he was the quality director for US Synthetic, where he helped win the enterprise level Shingo Prize in 2011. Now a systems engineer at JUMP, Jed helps people see how they can achieve better and faster insights with their data. Q&A with Jed will take place at the conclusion of the keynote talk. We invite you to submit questions using the Q&A feature. We also do have Donnie Kopp, one of our JUMP technical resources, here to help answer Q&A while Jed presents. Q&A and also in the chat or reactions to interact with us. So please feel free to use those and ask questions. Thank you for being here. On to you, Jed.
Okay, I'm going to close the chat and just ignore it. You should see a journal, a JUMP journal on the left, and in the background, Pace and Peak in the Wind Rivers that we were talking about a little bit earlier. That's probably one of the world's best campsites if you ever want to go there. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit more philosophically. So if you're hoping to see how to make a control chart or how to do a capability study, that's not this. Today, we're talking more about culture and about using data, how to get data, and how to make time to improve your culture, and essentially to build a quality culture. Kristen, are the fonts big enough? Probably should have asked this before. Okay, good. So I want to start off a little bit by talking about a broken window. And this is just a little story. This is me about 20 years ago. Some punk kid just out of college, that's me, was put into a production supervisor role. And I came in at the beginning of my shift in the morning and noticed that there was a broken window in the production area. And I asked the guys on graveyard shift, hey, what's up with that window? And they said, oh, I don't know. You better ask the swing shift. And so I thought, okay, whatever. I'll ask the swing shift when they get here this afternoon. And I kind of just put it on my to-do list to get somebody to come in and fix that. And about 15 minutes later, one person came in. And I don't have his permission to share this story. So instead of using his name, we'll call him Grover, because that was his nickname. He came in and he said, I just couldn't be comfortable without telling you. I was fooling around and I broke the window. I'm sorry. What do I need to do to make this right? And I'm sure he was expecting some sort of punishment or something, but that means, of course, that I gave him movie tickets and thanked him instead. And for the next 20 years, I probably never really lived that down. But it was the right decision. I gave him some movie tickets, and it should become abundantly clear by the end of this why giving him movie tickets was the right decision for the culture of the organization. So speaking of culture, we're going to start today talking a little bit about culture. Then I'm going to spend a few minutes about sort of some data theory, and then how do we make time to use data to solve problems. And then we'll get back to that broken window at the end. So a quality culture, I'm going to just really quickly define a quality culture as it's people making quality processes. And that's nice, but what does it really mean? Well, you have to understand that a quality process is a process that is robust. So it's maybe you've heard the words anti-fragile, but so it's a process that's tolerant of faults. It's transparent, and it's consistently and constantly improving. And you get there by people. So how do we get to a quality culture? I'm going to say there are probably three things that you need to focus on. First is developing people. So it's really, really important to teach people in an organization to use data to make decisions. And why? Well, it's because people make the decisions as to what data to record, when to look at a problem, when to ignore that problem. You can't have a culture without people. And if you have people, you necessarily already have a culture. So question would be, what do you want your culture or your organization to look like? Uh, Focus on the number of problem finders to the number of problem solvers. If you're a typical organization, you probably have more problem finders than you do problem solvers. What you want to have happen is you want to have a world-class organization where you have a lot of problem finders and a lot of problem solvers. So you have both of those things. So developing people turns people into just problem finders into problem finders and problem solvers, and focusing on that development is actually a really great way to get good results in your organization. And you can think about it this way. A lot of organizations have money for training, and you say, well, we could train our employees and that would give us some slope where our ROI would improve. Or we could hire people from off the street that have analytics skills or data problem solving skills, and that could do something. But I would say that training your employees on how to use data to solve problems gives I think the word is synergistic, gives you a really good effect that you get much higher training your own employees how to use data to solve problems than you would if you were to just grab people off the street or invest in training something else. So how do we do this? A couple of ways to do it. First off, you could do classes internally. You can hire external people. You can have. I'm sure there are a number of consultants in the world that would love to come to your organization and help you. I actually gave a discovery presentation a number of years ago on how to build a training curriculum using JUMP. And I've got a link to that that we'll share with you. But since I've built that, I think it's actually much better now to just use the STIPS course, Statistical Thinking for Industrial Problem Solving. This is a free course. It's very similar to what you might find in a Six Sigma Black Belt type analysis. And it's about a 30-hour course. It's totally free. It was developed by JUMP for you and for your organization. If that's not enough, there are also other on-demand courses like custom design of experiments, all sorts of things. And if that's still not enough, there are a gazillion resources. So don't feel that you have to spend a lot of money to develop your people. You can do it pretty much for free, besides just their time. So once you've developed people and helped them to understand how to use data to solve problems, then I think it's time to focus on a foundation. Now, you may have seen a graph that looks something like this before, and you may have seen, or you may have heard that standardized work is the foundation for continuous improvement. I think it's something that's repeated a lot, but it isn't necessarily understood for how simple it really is. So just like a control chart separates the signal from the noise and tells you when you have a problem, when the situation is abnormal versus normal, standard work is the same thing. Standard work is a sort of a metaphorical, whatever that word is, a metaphorical way to see normal versus abnormal. And if you can't see abnormal in a process, you can't improve it. So standardized work is really, really important as that foundational principle. So some practical suggestions. have a really simple and formal method for documenting your processes, and have a simple and formal method for training people to those processes. I'm going to suggest one of those. It's free. It is the Training Within Industry methodology. This is something that Toyota uses, and they adopted after World War II. They haven't actually changed it in the entire history of Toyota. So if you know much about Toyota and their culture of improvement, to have something that hasn't been improved in a number of years, that means that it's a pretty good system. It's in the public domain. You can still get it for free, and it really just focuses on something called a job breakdown sheet. That job breakdown sheet is a really easy and standard way to document and standardize your training. Document your processes and standardize your training. It's also a method to highlight abnormalities. And so what a job breakdown sheet is, it's just the important steps, the key points associated with those, and the reasons why you would do them. What's important about this is it is super, super critical to communicate the why. So if I take, for example, this step number 6, it has a couple of key points. That first key point is, so we're making a box here, by the way, out of wood. That first key point that says here, pre-drill the holes before inserting the screws. Why do we do that? Well, to keep the wood from splitting. So if I can communicate that the why to people, then that ensures that the work gets done. If the drill bit breaks, I'm not just going to skip the step because it's important to keep the wood from splitting. I'm going to take the time and I'm going to go get a new drill bit. I maybe document it and start thinking about it. It also gives me, I mentioned thinking about it, also gives me something to think about. Every one of these key points in this list is essentially a little science fair experiment that somebody could do. If we take this same key point, pre-drilling the holes, this is something that maybe somebody is building something, a piece of IKEA furniture at their house, and it comes with self-tapping screws. And they think, wow, maybe we could get self-tapping screws. So if we've trained them to use data to solve problems, then they're capable of addressing this key point, finding out what the ROI is between the labor and the added cost of a self-tapping screw, and then doing a simple comparison, running the process for a while and seeing, did it keep the wood from splitting? And does it cost us less? Essentially, every one of these key points is fair game for continuous improvement. You might hear the word Kaizen or uh, uh, suggestions or whatever. It's just incremental improvement over time. And then this also communicates to the organization these important steps. You can communicate that these are important, and if you want to change one of these, you need to involve all of the stakeholders in the process. Really, really easy. It's a really great way to serve as basically a foundation for continuous improvement. And it highlights normal versus abnormal. Okay, so if we've taught people how to use data to solve problems, we've built that solid foundation where they can see normal versus abnormal, then the culture needs to be aligned with the problem solving. There are intrinsic rewards to problem solving. It makes people happier at work. But I would say that the culture also needs to reward problem solving. So, you know, whether it's big or small problems, the culture needs to reward that. So that could be something like a simple, inexpensive reward system. Movie tickets, food is really nice, but there's also sometimes there's a question of, well, should we focus on the small improvements? We're not gonna teach people how to use data to solve problems because that whole Six Sigma thing is tough, and we're not smart, so we're just gonna focus on the small things. Well, or you could say, well, we're just going to focus on this data problem solving. We're going to all become data scientists. We're going to leave the small things behind. They both get you about the same place, but I would submit that you really need to do both. Because if you can do both, then you're going to get that much farther ahead. So again, if you can focus on both and you build a system that that rewards people then that then that the improvements just tend to naturally happen. I would say that also when you're building your systems, and this is really important, and I think is often missed. The system needs to support the people and not the other way around. The systems are built for the people. If you're going to show people how to find uh, normal versus abnormal, and if they're going to be able to see the abnormal situation, they need to be empowered to address the abnormalities. If the system is so rigid and rigorous that they can't, you're just creating frustration. So make sure you build that system that supports them. And then finally, focus on soft skills. Um, uh, it's really important to not only celebrate the success with the movie tickets, but also celebrate failures. And this isn't necessarily, this doesn't mean that everybody that comes to you with a broken window needs movie tickets, but if somebody tries to solve a problem and they fail, please don't blame them. Celebrate that they tried, because then they will continue to try. I would also suggest that Franklin Covey has 13 behaviors of trust. These are really, really great to both practice and live within your organization. So if you can do that, you can focus on your foundation. So you teach people how to use data to solve problems. You teach them to see normal versus abnormal, and you're celebrating people's efforts. Then I would say that you have a quality culture. And an anthropologist would say that that culture creates artifacts, or more precisely, that you can determine a culture by measuring what artifacts are left behind. So, for example, at Jump, we want to have a culture of being helpful, trusted, and approachable. And so, what that means is you should probably see uh, that there are artifacts left behind. That if we want to be helpful, you should see that there should be lots of resources that help you to do your job, help you to use data to solve problems. If we want to be trusted, you should be able to interact with world class experts that give you believable and actionable answers, and of course the approachableness, right? Um, you would expect to see behavior that invites people to ask questions. So, what does that look like for quality? So, I would say that the artifacts of a quality culture are really simple. It's just people seeing problems and solving problems. If you have both of those, you have a quality culture. That doesn't mean you have world class quality yet, but it does mean that you will eventually, because as long as you keep fostering this, you have the correct culture. Okay, so we have a really good culture, and I would say that the next thing to focus on is using data to solve problems. You can't solve problems based on feeling, and you can't solve problems if you don't have access to the data. So in Jump, things like the query builder make it really easy to query databases. Even if you don't know the database language, it'll write it for you. You can run those queries, you can get the information. Maybe you have files that that control that have your information. You can use the workflow builder to record yourself making investigations that you do regularly. That's really easy. Would also suggest that if you do have a database and you don't already have a reporting copy of that database, that you should do that. And your IT department will probably love to do this. They've likely been looking for an excuse to do it, because it makes their life much easier. They never have to give anyone write access to the actual database, and they can give read access to just this reporting database. And then if everybody has read access to that database, when they're curious, they can start solving problems of themselves. And they don't have to go to IT and say, hey, can you download this from the database for me? No, you can do it yourself once that's available. Um, so once the data is available, what can you do? Well, there are a gazillion things you can do to make information more available, whether it's on a on a server on something like Jump Live, where you can say, well, here's what our quality is. We've gone 624 days since our last escape, but we had 9 out of control events in the last 24 hours. It doesn't have to be just for quality though. It can also be for any department, right? You can have information ready and available for people. So if the information is available to the procurement group that Cosmos Chemical has a really big opportunity for efficiency gains, then when there's extra time, they can focus on that. You can, doesn't have to be online, right? You can make dashboards that help you understand things. So we can look at, our corrective and preventive actions, and we can see that Penny and Stan both have overdue actions. Essentially, any information you can give to people helps them to make better decisions. And when they're using data to make better decisions, then the business is moving forward. Even production can benefit from this, right? If there's some information that they need to get to regularly, make it available to them. Let them make those decisions that they can use based on that. And then I would say, once you have access to data, bring it with you. Explore it in real time. Use it in live during your meetings with stakeholders. I remember being in a meeting with a customer a number of years ago, where the customer said, "Hey, we're really concerned." Let me make these markers a little bit bigger. "We're really concerned about this widget that you just shipped us. We made really, really expensive products, and for something to perform kind of below what you would expect was a big deal." Fortunately, because we had all of the data there, we were able to say to them, "Well, you're right. This has performed a little bit lower than recently, but it's definitely the process, and this widget product line is getting better over time. Not only that, but it's within the noise of what we would expect, and we have a reasonable certainty that the product itself is actually getting better over time." So that went way better than me saying, "Oh yeah, I'll look into that." The concern was addressed perfectly at that point. And of course, that was fake data. But the moral is, bring your data with you. Bring it to when you have a report out. If your team is trying to investigate something, let's say you're investigating a process and you're reporting out, and you say, "Hey, we built this model and it describes a certain amount of the variation, and these are the factors that we think are important." If someone raises their hand and says, "Hey, have you considered this previously unconsidered variable?" If you have the data with you, you can say, "Oh, well, luckily we have that data. Let's add that and see." And sure enough, maybe the person in the audience had more information than you did, or maybe it goes the other way, and you had yet another previously unconsidered variable, and maybe you can say to the audience, "Yeah, it doesn't look like that's really important. But thanks for asking, though." Having the data with you is super important. And then finally, about data, uh, just like to encourage you to generate more of it. And I know that this isn't going to go over well for a lot of people, but you need to embrace 100% inspection wherever possible. And the reason why is at least two really smart people, and I've got the books and the chapter references there, basically convinced me years ago that doing sampling inspection or acceptance sampling is never going to get you to world-class quality. And they're absolutely right. The math just doesn't work. So embrace 100% inspection wherever you can. Also embrace control charting wherever you can. Deming, another quality guru, said that traditional manufacturing, actually his quote was American manufacturing, but we'll say traditional manufacturing, robs workers of their birthright. Robs workers of their birthright. That's pretty like over the top language. What was that birthright? He said that that birthright was the right to have feedback, to know how well you're doing at your job. And so control charting, of course, is really great for automated processes, but it's also really great for manual processes that people run, because people want to have, they crave that feedback. I remember being in a situation where we were introducing control charting into production and on manual processes. And I wrote a little utility that just allowed the person to make a widget, measure a widget, and then enter that measurement. And I told them, hey, I want you to aim for the green line. That's your job. If you can't hit the green line, great, but please aim for it. They were able to go in just a few weeks from a process that looked kind of like this to something that looked like this. And if you're familiar with capability studies, they went from, and again, this is simulated data, from a CPK of about 0.7 or 0.8 to a CPK of over 2. I remember once actually going out into production and asking people, how is this working for you? And I saw somebody with a CPK of 5, and I thought, oh no, this guy's making it up. He's just entering fake data. And I confronted him on it. I said, so something weird going on here? And he just looked at me and he said, no, this is product such and such. It's an easy product to make. I can hit the target spot on every time. Do you want me to make things up? No, I definitely don't. Thank you. Yeah, so giving people access to that feedback helps them to deliver what everybody wants, which is a product that's on target with minimal variation. Last up about data, recognize that you're probably making more data than you think you are, and just please stop throwing it away. If you do any sort of an experiment, whether it's just a little quick A versus B test, or if you do a designed experiment, you're designing and generating data. And remember that write-ups aren't just for your high school science class, right? If you do an experiment, you should write it up. You should put it in some place that's indexable and searchable and ideally interactive, so that even somebody without your software, your stat software, can interact with it. And then when they have a question about the process, they can interrogate the data, with finger quotes, interrogate the data, so they can tangle with it. They can ask questions. Super important to write down what you're doing when you do it. Okay, so it's really great for me to say, hey, you need to focus on your culture and you need data to solve problems. But really, how in the world, if you're in an organization that struggles with quality and you want to change that organization and make it world class, how in the world are you going to get the time to do that? Well, I would suggest that we can make that time through automation. And an example of this. So the founder of the Toyota Automobile Company, he said that when we ask people to come to work and we waste their time, that we're wasting their lives. And that's both like really profound and also really simple, which I think is why it sticks and resonates with me so much, right? So it's profoundly disrespectful to ask people to waste their time. And anytime somebody is doing some mindless task over and over again without engaging their brain, we are absolutely wasting their time. So why should we automate things? Let's take, for example, a typical company of maybe somewhere around 30 people. I probably should have counted those dots before we started, but it looks like it's about 30 people. If you look up here, well, if you look on the left, this is about how much time these people are spending in each of the tasks down below, right? So we've got 6 people that are spending 8 hours plus per week just on data access. And at the same time, we have somebody that has it automated. Same with data blending and cleanup. All of these things can be automated in Jump very easily. So if we think about this, right, if we've got a team of 30 people and we can save them, let's say 6 hours a week, that's the equivalent of adding 4.5 people to the team. And maybe we're being ambitious here, so let me cut that in half. If we can save everybody 3 hours a week, that's the same as if we went out and hired 2 more people for our team of 30. But those people, we don't have to onboard, we don't have to pay them a salary, we don't have to, um, excuse me, we don't have to wait 5 years for them to come up to speed. They're just available because they were found in our waste. So automation is a great way to free up resources, and those resources are time, so we can stop wasting our time on unimportant things. So let me go over a couple of automation ideas for you. Um, by the way, another plug for Discovery. I gave a talk at Discovery in 2022 that goes over a lot of this in detail, more of how to do these things. But think about this. You could make a sample console with, let's say you're a quality manager over a product line. I'm sure there are things that you have to do daily, weekly, and monthly, right? You can automate each of those into a little console. Let's say each day you have to just look at a couple of control charts and say, oh, nothing to see here, nothing to see here, time to move on. You can automate that. Turn it into 2 clicks, one to see it, one to clean up afterwards. Maybe, we looked at this a little bit earlier, corrective and preventive action, CAPA dashboard. Having access to this in an automated one-click way is probably a good way to keep these 2 corrective actions that Hank owns from becoming overdue. I'm sure Hank would have loved to have been able to see him approaching the deadline rather than be informed a few weeks afterwards, right? So little things like that. I spent a lot of time in my previous job looking at audits that people did every month. And I just wrote a little tool that scraped all of those audits into one report for me. So I didn't have to spend a lot of time clicking. Think about this, right? If you have governing bodies or like ISO type things, there are a lot of things that the auditors make you do. I guarantee most of those things can be automated, which A, makes the audit go a lot smoother, and B, when the audit goes smoother, then you spend time during the audit finding real problems, which is way more valuable than just satisfying the auditor. You can, beyond that, you can help production improve their quality, right? So, somebody in production may have an idea for some change to the system, and if you have them, in-house programmers are great. There's usually a line and of things that they need to work on, and maybe you might say, oh, let's see if there's off-the-shelf software. It might not exist for what you need, but you can use Jump to make a really quick tool. You can put it in place. So maybe you need to pull the database on a regular basis while you wait for the in-house programmers to change the design software to prevent this from happening. But until we've prevented it from happening, I can click a button once a day and say, yeah, it looks like we have 2 new products, luckily, that we haven't made yet, but they have an issue with their component check. Oh, let's go fix those. Maybe you have a process that's somewhat complicated with a flow through production, and maybe things tend to get lost every once in a while. So you can write a little tool to just make a graph and say, well, if I'm looking for this specific widget, then I'm going to go look at planarization, and that's where it was seen at around midnight yesterday. Oh, okay. That's really, really easy. So you can make tools that production can use for this. And you can help your teams work faster. So think about maybe a tool to help your supplier quality team check incoming materials against specifications automatically, and then automatically tell you if there's something wrong with production. And even if there's something not necessarily out of spec, but maybe out of control, they can find it in just a few clicks. And then they can get on the phone with this vendor and say, hey, I noticed we've got maybe a problem. Is this something I should be worried about? All these things can be automated. Maybe you have things where your customers need specific information pretty regularly. Well, you can just export that directly to PowerPoint through automation. Very easy to do that and then send, or maybe there's a compliance activity that needs to happen and it needs to go out in an email. And of course that email shows up on the wrong screen, but so sorry, let me find where I'm supposed to be here. So maybe it's just a copy paste type thing where I come in and I type this hello message and then I paste it and then I hit send, right? So you can save a ton of time automating things. And once you've done that, well, then that allows you to go to Gemba. If you're not familiar with the term Gemba, it's a manufacturing term for like the scene of the action. I think it comes from Japanese manufacturing. And it's just this notion that you can't solve a problem from your desk. You have to actually go to where the problem is happening. And when you go to where the problem is happening, you most likely will find that people that are already making the problem, they already are aware of the problem. They even know how to solve it. They just haven't had time yet. And so if you can listen to people and implement their suggestions, pull them in on problem solving teams, give them credit when they're successful, and even give them credit when they're not successful, then again, you're reinforcing that culture. You're using that time to create a better quality culture. And Steve Zuprina gave a really good talk at Discovery in 2020. So we're going to link to that right here. I think this is probably one of the best Discovery talks. I think it was also voted best of conference. So please definitely watch that. So what are we getting at here? If you can take the time to focus on your culture and make your data easy to access, then the people in your organization who know how to use data because you've trained them will use that data to solve problems. You can create more time for everybody by automating the mundane things, which allows you to spend your time doing the fun things, really, the fun problem solving. Then what do you have? Then you have a quality culture. And I want to maybe swing back to that broken window. There's often an expectation that when something bad happens, when everything goes haywire, that someone needs to be blamed. And it happens so often that we make funny cups about it. But I think there's a better way. And an example. So after I left, so I've been with Jump for almost 2 years now. Actually, a year and 11 months today. I left a great company, US Synthetic, that had a wonderful quality culture. And after I left there was unfortunately a quality issue that affected a customer. This is one of those big deal moments that you kind of hope to go years or decades without happening. But the new quality director called me, and he was amazed that someone came to him saying, "Hey, I think I caused this problem." And this was my friend Tara. I got her permission to share this story. So she went to the new quality director and she said, "I think I caused this problem. And I think I know how to recreate it in our shipping software." So to me, that's a really good artifact of a quality culture. When someone can see a mistake and tell on themselves, that's what really makes going to work worth it. And it drives home the point that people are what make quality happen. And you might say, wait. It's not people that make quality happen. It's processes that make quality. If you have good processes, then you'll have good quality. Well, hate to break it to you, people make those processes. Well, I thought quality control is important. Well, it's still people. Well, I thought anything you say, robust design, anything, everything, it all comes down to the people. And so the culture that you have ultimately defines the type of quality that you have. And so going back to that giving movie tickets, I think it should be abundantly clear now that 20 years ago, giving movie tickets to somebody wasn't the only thing that made Tara decide to tell on herself. Uh, but having a culture where we can admit mistakes is super, super important and helps really define our quality. So I've got a to-do list for you. First, if you need anything from this presentation and you don't have jump, like say, for example, you want to convince your boss that, hey, it's time for us to start focusing on automation. I put a ton of these things into the Jump Live repository for technically speaking, so you can interact with those. But like true call to action here, um, I want you to deploy, if you haven't already, deploy STIPs in your organization. It's free, and I want to call your attention right up to this corner up here in the right. If you're a leader in your organization and you want to essentially make STIPs be part of your organization instead of just sending people to a website, we can totally make that happen. So you can have access to all the teaching materials to make it happen. Second, take one step to make your data more accessible. And third, automate at least one task to free up some time. And that's what I have. Are there any questions in the chat that I've been ignoring?
Hey, Jed, I just have to say that was so fascinating, but also so inspirational. What a
Oh,
great
thank you.
demo. I think we can all take a lot of what you said to heart. We do have some time for questions. The Q&A feature is still open, so if you want to put your questions in, please go ahead and do so. If we're not able to get to all of them, that's okay. We will be having a blog post that we'll share later. But Jed, let me ask you this first. What have you learned anything at Jump that you wish you would have known when you were working in industry?
This is going to sound silly. It's a lot more technical than what I've been talking about, but um, Jump, just after I left, came out with type 1 gauge studies. And this is where you measure the same part over and over and over again with the same person and the same gauge. It's just a really great way to understand each and every gauge in your system. And it was a gap that we had been addressing a little bit differently. So yeah, I wish I had known about type 1 gauge studies before I left.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you, Jed. Another one. Do you have any recommendations for someone just getting started in quality?
If they're just getting started, I'm going to sound a little like a broken record. Come and take the STIPS course. Um, if you're just getting started as a leader in a quality or in an organization, run everybody through. The more people you can get through a data science curriculum, the faster your quality will improve and the better it will be.
Yeah, that's really great feedback. I think STIPS also, Jed, I'll add to that. When I started 5 years ago as a brand new Jump user, you know, I come from a different world, a non-technical side, and STIPS really helped transition my experience too. So not only honing in your skills, but also just getting familiar with the software itself. So it's a great resource.
Well, and it was really fun for me as a user at the time in industry when STIPS was being created. I got to help develop it. So Jump employees came out to my organization. They asked me questions about like, hey, when you hire people just out of college, what are they missing? What do you wish they knew? And these are the things that we wished they knew. And of course, my organization wasn't the only one that they met with, but it was a really, really user-driven and industry-driven course, which makes it world-class.
And you can take it over and over again. I think I've done a couple
Yes.
of those modules twice. So it's unlimited for you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jed. And I think that's all the time right now we have for questions. But for those wanting more, a blog post will be available where you can continue to interact with us. We appreciate your time, Jed and Donnie.
Yeah, absolutely.
JMP enables you to explore and understand data with its easy-to-use interface and highly interactive visual analysis capabilities. Though the focus for today's talk was quality, JMP addresses a wide variety of application areas in the broader analytics workflow. So that concludes this episode of Technically Speaking. If you enjoyed today's webcast, you're invited to download a 30-day free trial of JMP. We'll drop a link in the chat, but you'll also get the recording and our follow-up resources, and this will include those presentation materials that Jed shared. Thank you everyone for joining and have a great rest of your day.